It's wonderful to reconvene. Thank you, sir. Thank you for taking a minute out today.
I'm happy to do it.
So I love the new book. Hopefully we can. Um, the background won't. Hold on a second. There we go.
Oh,
There's
there
a
it
cover.
comes on. Very good.
So
Glad you liked it.
yeah, it was wonderful. And the thing that's kind of eerie about this book is that there's so many things that are happening right now that are blurring the lines between fiction and reality.
Yes, it is true. I wrote this some time ago, and but I'm surprised at how much of it seems to be coming true.
So, speaking of writing it so long ago, what was it about your life at the time or what you were thinking and feeling that has been reflected into things that are actually happening now that are akin to the narrative of this book?
Well, that's a good question. I, as I say, I wrote this about probably began it about 2 years ago, and I just felt that there was an ominous movement going in the country that I just found very disturbing, particularly in the social media. I don't follow social media myself, but bits and pieces I would pick up or I would get referred to, and I thought this doesn't sound right to me. This doesn't sound like the country I grew up in, and I started reading about it, and then I decided to do a piece on neo-Nazi revival. There was an right at the end of World War II, and when Hitler was still in power, his acolytes created, or specifically Heinrich Himmler, created a movement which became Black Sun. And I began to read in it just an historically interesting fact. And I looked into this and I thought, there's parallels to what Himmler dreamed of doing. He died before any, fortunately, before he could carry out his plans. But I thought I'd incorporate that history of Black Sun and the neo-Nazi dreams of revival at the end of World War II, well, during World War II, and then some of the people involved who survived it recreated it at the end. There were a lot of crazy people involved. Well, I expect they were almost all kind of lunatics. And became, I wanted to integrate that historical moment with something that's going on in the country, this country, America, today. And so I recreated, well, I shouldn't say recreated, revived Black Sun, which is an existing movement, loonies, but, and I wanted to sort of integrate it into what I thought was going on. And then I became very disturbed by what I felt was the role of hyper super billionaires who are financing all of this behind this. Now that's my creation. That's my imagination, my fictionalization of what's going on. I didn't have specific people in mind when I wrote the book, but I felt that there was money behind this, and I thought that was a very dangerous event. So I incorporated these three things: an historical incident, events going on in this country, and my speculation about who might or what might be behind this. So that's the origin story, if you will.
Yeah. The thing that gets me is that there used to be a time where all this Nazi propaganda was just purely seen as fiction, and we've crossed this line where we're seeing people like Kanye West and others that have a lot of money that are doing it. How in the hell have we gotten to a point where any of this is even remotely becoming our narrative at all? It's so bad. Like, how do you think this happened?
Yes, that's a very profound question. I wish I had a smart answer. There seems to be something changing in American politics. Uh, the kind of stuff that you hear regularly on social media on the political side would been unheard of. And my speculation was it's always been there. I just recently read a biography of several biographies uh, and people who were grew up in the 30s, and they had a lot of these same ideas. My theory is that World War II intervened. We learned what Nazis were really like. We got a lot of men who were in the army, or men and women now, who were in Europe, who saw the results, who saw the camps, who visited people, who knew, who could see in person what the effects of this Nazi regime did to their country and to all of Europe, and might have done to the United States. And so I think people shut up for a while and became quiet, and it was bad form. And now people forget. The new generation, people who don't remember what World War II was like, what the Nazi regime, what Italian fascist regime, or indeed there were right-wing regimes throughout Europe, or were likely to be. But we came close to that in the United States in the late 1930s. And it just disappeared, but it didn't totally disappear, but became quiet. And people didn't, as I say, Hitler gave anti-Semitism a bad name. People wouldn't say that, say things that they thought. And so because it's made them sound like Hitler and his stooges. So that was bad taste. But that's time has passed. People forget. And we now have a generation of people who think of Hitler and his uh, criminal co-conspirators as a bunch of, well, sort of fun, maybe, and not to be taken too seriously. And worst of all, well, maybe they had a point. Maybe they knew something. They were doing something right. And that's the scary part. Well, I hate to say it, but I think there's been this uh, uh, crypto Nazi, crypto fascist uh, element in our country for a long time, and it's just been suppressed or forgotten. And thankfully, but it didn't go away. And I think now people are stirring it up. No, I'm not saying everybody thinks this way. I don't believe that's the case at all. I think most people despise the Nazis and what they stood for and would be horrified to think that anything like Hitler and his Goering and Himmler could or people like them could ever assume power in this country. And most people would dismiss that. But there's a lot of people who don't. And that's what's scary. And that's what I was trying to get at.
And I look at the American timeline, and there has been so much progressive history, and even having President Obama in for 2 terms, and so many things seem like we were just getting to a better place, even with women's rights and all of these things. And I just find the whole Nazi idea now to be the apex of the sickness that's going on in people's minds. And I think that's what I've heard. It's all kind of been simmering on the underbelly, and they just needed that one political figure or that one movement to get everybody out. Because the other day in Kansas City, there was a neo-Nazi rally that was downtown that popped up for an hour, and it's inflamed everybody here. It's become the talk of everything. But those
That,
things are happening more and more often. So the tapestry of your narrative in this book is totally what's taking place in this country.
so my theory, my theme is which is my just my imagination, is that there are serious organizations who want to recreate the Nazi regime, but they need to destroy democracy to do that. Because if you put it to people, ordinary men and women in the street, they say, no way. I don't want anything to do with that. People
Yeah.
like that. So create my theory is if you have a violent overthrow of the United States government and leave basically anarchy, there's an opening for people who like who esteem fascism, and they'll come in and gently at first, and then eventually uh, take over the country. And I don't think that's what Americans want. I'm sure
No.
they want. But you mentioned Barack Obama. Yeah, I thought too, when he was elected, I thought we made a turning point
Yep.
in our country. And we're not going to go back. Well, the scary thing is we do seem to be going back. And I don't recognize, sometimes I don't recognize the country I live in. The country I worked for the US government for 25 years or so in the Foreign Service, representing the United States abroad. And I was very proud to do that. And I'm thinking recently, I thought, I'm not sure I could really do that job now in this day and age. And I don't want to be too negative. I'm not saying doom and gloom and the country's coming to an end because I don't really think so. I think there are enough honest, patriotic, and sensible people in this country, but it's scary.
It is very scary. So your protagonist, Detective Marko Zorn, has this incredible humanity that keeps him centered. But there's this fine line, this danger, and it's always like he's walking into an impossible situation. What was this character modeled after? How did you find such a precariously deep subject that crosses and gets on both sides of your heartbeat so um,
That's,
well?
I wish I had an intelligent answer to that question too. When I first started writing, I knew that I wanted to make Marco Zorn. I had to make him a detective because that gives the allows him to be get involved in a lot of criminal. I mean, as an investigator, um, so he's not just a private citizen. But I wanted him to make him not a hero. He's certainly no superhero. He has flaws. He's been damaged. We don't know. The reader doesn't know. I know, but as the author, I know. But he's been damaged. He's not fatally damaged, but he has flaws as a person. He works with some very dubious characters. He has side hustles to pay for his lifestyle. He has very expensive tastes. He likes sports cars, classic sports cars. He likes fine art, good food, and he can't pay for that on the salary of a Washington, D.C. Police detective. So he finds other sources. So he associates with some very unsavory people. But at heart, he's a very moral person. And he will not allow his uh, choice of lifestyle to influence that. And he can, when he's faced with very serious challenges, he has he has a very strong moral compass, and he will not deviate from that moral compass. But in doing so, he will do have to do things like breaking and entering into an office, as he did in one case. In this case, he will do things that are technically illegal and for which he would be should be punished as a police officer. He gets away with it because he's very good at it, and he has an outstanding record of closure on criminal cases. So, but he's also a troublemaker. He does not like high level people
Yeah.
in the government. He was in the army. He was an enlisted man, and at one point, I think he says, "I'm at heart an enlisted man." He does not. Uh, he does not really like officers. Certainly does not like field grade officers, and he's very suspicious of high people high in the government or high in industry. So that's one of the things that motivates him. It's just an instinct. He likes the common man, and he trusts the common man, and he doesn't trust others very much.
I think the one thing about him too is no matter how much trouble he gets into, no matter how many things that are just absolutely deep around him, he's always got a level of hope. He always instills this hope. With that being said, with the depth of what you've talked about with the Nazi angle and with what's going on in America, are you hopeful? Where are you at with where we're going and hopefully where what we can become as a country?
Well, I guess that's just a personal thing. I needed to make him positive.
Yeah,
In the first place, I don't think readers really want to spend an evening reading about somebody who's negative and
yeah,
depressed and thinks that the world's going to hell. What keeps him going is he does believe in people like him, and in he has the people he works with in the police department, and actually people he works with in some of the criminal organization are people he admires, and he likes them, and he thinks they're going to prevail, and he wants to be on the right side, and he thinks they will be on the right side if he works hard enough and takes the chances that he must take. So that does that answer your question?
absolutely. Yeah, it certainly does. So I'm curious, your books tend to be heavy and you have to I would think you would have to throttle down because you can't be at that level, hum at that level all the time. What do you do to throttle down from writing these novels? Do you write poetry? Do you do crossword puzzles? Do you swim? What do you do to relax and get into this mode?
I don't do I do crossword puzzles. I'm
Yeah,
not very good at them, but I
right.
do them. But my wife helps me out. Between the two of us, we work through them. Um, but I like to read. I do a lot of reading. I've been it's a lot of nonfiction. I'm reading a book about the history of the human language. I've always been very interested in language. I've read a number of books about that, about language and its development and how it's changed over time. Um, I used to read a lot about politics, but that's very depressing. So I kind of stopped doing that.
Yeah.
But I keep myself when I'm not writing. Well, I guess one of the things is I have a sense of humor, so I can see the humor in a lot of things that other people don't see humor in.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do the ideas work? How do you take the idea like with Black Sun Rising and manifest that into a book? How do you have ideas now for new books? How does that work for you?
Well, I get a basic theme, which is described for Black Sun Rising, and usually it's something that I've read about in the paper or in the news or on television. One of them had to do with white militias. One of them to do with Putin sending an assassin to Washington to assassinate one of his rivals in one of the countries in Eastern Europe. One of them had to do with the last one with big medicine, fraudulent promotion of a medication. So I usually have a theme that strikes interest in me that's going on in the public world. I then try to research that to the extent I don't want to overstate the research part, but I do try to get articles, get some books. Found several books on Black Sun and neo-Nazism, and I read through that. Not make. I don't want to write a serious book on it, but just to get ideas,
Yeah.
personalities. A lot of time just looking for vocabulary, and then I start, and I know that what I want to do, this is true for all the books I've written. I know where I want to start, and I know where I want to end. I know what the big opening scene has got to be, and I know what the closing scene has got to be. I know the opening scene has got to be one of violence because I need to let the reader know what kind of book this is going to be. This is not going to be a romance or has something to do with fawns and in the forest or something like that. It's something. It's going to be contemporary. It's going to be urban, and it's going to be violent. And I know where it's going to end. I knew I know how it's going to end, and I know it's again it's going to be dramatic. At least I try to make it as dramatic. And in the case of Black Sun Rising, it took place in a place very near where I used to live. It's a real site in Washington, and it's where when you have uh, inauguration parades, when Barack Obama was inaugurated, he stopped and he got out of the car just where I lived then in an apartment, and he got out and it was a Navy memorial. He wanted to give honor to the Navy, the U.S. Navy, and to the veterans of the U.S. Navy. And it was a brief visit, and he got out. And I thought, well, that would be a place if you wanted to assassinate the president. That would be the place. And I know that we had a lot to deal with the Secret Service because they were not happy with that arrangement. But in any case, I changed it, of course, by putting the last quarter of the novel underground, all of which is totally imagination. I've never been under the city of Washington and hope never to be. I'm
Right.
just trying to imagine what it's like. So I wanted to get a war going on there. But I knew everything in between the the opening scene and the closing scene. I just sort of play it by ear. I knew that I needed to alternate some violent scenes, but with scenes of just standard investigation, police investigation, and I needed to introduce characters who some of whom have seen before, and some of whom are brand new, and I wanted to introduce characters high level in the government because it gave me an opportunity to show Marko Zorn's disdain for the people like that. And then also, of course, I had the villains, had to introduce them. That and but all of that was sort of by the seat of the pants, as they say.
Yeah. Well, it's masterfully done. I love the book. Again, Black Sun Rising, covers right here. So if anybody wants to pick up a copy, they want to pick up your previous work, reach out. How do they do that?
You can go to Amazon. They're happy to sell you. You can go to my homepage, Otho Eskin, at what is my homepage, right? And any of your local bookstores. I will I'd be happy to give them as much business as you can.
Yeah, absolutely. I will put all these links in the show notes. Otho, it's so great to catch up with you again, sir. Thank you for
My
your
pleasure.
work. Thank you for your stories. I appreciate it, man.
Okay, good luck to you.
Yes, sir. Hello, friends. Joe Dimino here. I just wanted to let you know that after 30 years or so, I have finally released my first book of poetry through the mighty Spartan Press here in Kansas City, Missouri. As the creator and host of both Neon Jazz Radio and the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino podcast, along with being a visual artist, I'm ready to embark on a new adventure and want you to be a part of it. You can get a copy online via Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and actually on the streets in Kansas City at the great Prospero's bookstore off 39th Street. You can also visit joedimino.com for links to the book, to more poetry, and everything in my world, including paintings. Thanks for all of the love and support over the years, and please dig the words.